One of the problems that we have in our community, gentlemen, and this is one of the brainwashed lessons that have been pushed on black people, and that is the belief that in order for us to fix our problem, the most educated have to lead the effort. That idea came from W.E.B. Du Bois, but it continues to exist in the black community. This notion that just because you were educated at a white institution or a black institution, or the notion that you have a master's degree or a doctorate degree necessarily means that you are best fit to lead the struggle. I totally disagree with that. And I have 5 college degrees, and I'm going to tell you I totally disagree with the belief that the best educated, are the most suited to lead. Why do I disagree with that? Because the best educated Negro is the one who is most likely to suffer the most internal confusion of everybody in the community as a result of the poisoning of his mind. See, remember, a college-educated Negro was not only poisoned for 12 years of public school, he or she was also poisoned for an additional 4 to 12 years of doctoral study and master's study and bachelor study. So a college-educated Negro, instead of having 12 years of menticide that most of us have, they can have upwards to 24 years of menticide. So the more education, the more screwed up that they are. So why would you want to put your most mentally ill people in charge of your revolutionary movement?
Reverend Martin Luther King preaches a doctrine of nonviolent insistence upon the rights of the American Negro. What is your attitude toward this philosophy?
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's just the American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they have taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully. Today, Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless in the face of attack that Uncle Tom did on the plantation to keep those Negroes defenseless in the face of the attacks of the Klan in that day.
Entitled Exposed, the myth that psychiatry has proven that homosexual behavior is normal. This was published on July 16, 2004. Again, the myth that psychiatry has proven that homosexual behavior is normal. And it says here, this is false, in part of numerous homosexual urban legends that have infiltrated every aspect of our culture. The removal of homosexuality as a mental disorder has given homosexual activists credibility in this culture, and they have demanded that their sexual behavior be affirmed in psychiatry and be affirmed by psychiatry. Prior to the APA 1973 convention, several psychiatrists attempted to organize opposition to the efforts of homosexuals to remove homosexual behavior from the DSM. Organizing this effort were Dr. Irvin Biber and Charles Socarides, who formed the ad hoc committee. Listen to this, brothers. They formed a committee. This is white psychiatrists. They formed a committee in the American Psychiatric Association called the Ad Hoc Committee Against the Removal of Homosexuality from the DSM, brothers. These are white people who organized in the APA to stop them from taking it out because they didn't want this nonsense being taught to their own white kids, brothers. They were fighting inside the APA to stop the homosexual movement, and they couldn't do nothing about it. See, the question we have to ask ourselves is this, brothers. If homosexuals are less than 20% of the entire population, and it's probably a little larger than that because you got a lot of folks who ain't admitting that this is what they do. But here's the question. If homosexuals are a minority of the population, where the hell are they getting all this money, all this power, all this clout? If you are a minority group, How is it that you're able to have your movement and your program push so well through the American media? If they're a minority, who's helping them? Who is helping the homosexuals push this agenda? Because after all, this is only supposed to be a small group. They are being aided by the American social order because it is in the best interest of America for black people to become gay. And unfortunately, gentlemen, it has taken over Africa by storm. In Ghana, a couple of untalented tenths, the buffer that keep us in our place to the benefit of the white social order, are also pushing the homosexuality. They have been given a dictate by the American social order that if you want to continue eating the crumbs from this table, and if you want to continue enjoying the privileged position that you have amongst your own people, then you better get busy pushing this homosexual agenda. Furthermore, one of the reasons why they had to push it is because many of them were forced to engage in homosexual behavior as a prerequisite to breaking that invisible glass ceiling. See, with any aristocracy, you have a homosexual secret movement going on amongst the black aristocracy. It is very difficult for a black man in America to achieve some kind of success in the American social order without bending over. It is very difficult for you to find a true black man who has broken the invisible glass ceiling and has not engaged in a homosexual act. In every black city in America, every major city, and even the small ones, you have the black aristocracy, and then you have the homosexual wing within the black aristocracy. And one of the things you have to do in order to get into the aristocracy is to engage in homosexual relations with another black man.
Sort of like with the blue bloods and the Europeans, that's their status quo.
Exactly. It's the same thing. It's a copycat movement. Because remember, the boule, and you don't necessarily have to be, you don't have to be a boule member in order to be an aristocrat. The boule is simply a secret society within the aristocracy. For example, you can be a rich white tycoon, and you might not be a Skull and Bloods. You might not be a Bilderberger. You can still be an aristocrat. Now, your membership in a secret society is an extra kudo that you earn if you want to take it a little bit further. The aristocracy is much larger than the boule. The boule is just a small group within. But the word boule means what? Servants of the king. And according to W.E.B. Du Bois, who was one of the earliest members of the boule, he said himself out of his mouth that the boule was started to keep the educated black man away from Marcus Garvey.